lesson in Indian polity is making of the Indian Constitution. Making of the Indian Constitution. It is very important lesson, not only in the exam point of view, but also in general. As a citizen of India, as we are enjoying the rights that are adopted by the Constitution of India, every citizen must know what is the historical background behind the making of Indian Constitution, what the contribution was done by the Indian national leaders and intellectuals in the making of Indian Constitution. Making a constitution is not at all an easy process. It is very highly intellectual process because Constitution reflects the aspirations, desires and demands of the nation. You should remember, Constitution reflects the demands, desires and the aspirations of the nation. Constitution is not static, but it is organic. That's why it must contains the content which is suitable to the present scenario and also the future scenario. That's why in the world, making of Constitution is done in two ways. Adopting by enacting a law in the parliament, or setting up a constitution assembly, a constituent assembly, and making the constitution by the contribution of constituent assembly. In the world history, the first constitution was made by Americans. They set up the first constituent assembly in the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. Philadelphia Convention is referred as the first constituent assembly in the world history. Philadelphia Convention is referred as the first constituent assembly in the world. It was set up by the Americans and they made their own constitution in 1787. And the second one is the National Constituent Assembly was set up by France in 1789. These two are the oldest constituent assemblies in the world. Philadelphia Convention is 1787 America, National Constituent Assembly 1789 France. By inspiring these two incidents, historical incidents, our Indian leaders demanded the British government to set up a constituent assembly to make our individual constitution. Constitution assembly is nothing but a group of elected members, a group of intellectual members to make a draft constitution. What is constituent assembly? Constituent assembly is nothing but a group of intellectual members who are elected directly or indirectly to make a draft constitution. That is constituent assembly. The main function of constituent assembly is to adopt a draft constitution and to act as a legislative assembly or to act as a parliament until the constitution came into existence. These two are the main functions of the Constituent Assembly. One, to make the draft constitution and to adapt it, and to act as parliament to enact laws until the original constitution came into force. These are the main two functions of Constituent Assembly. Let us see the historical demands of setting up of Indian Constituent Assembly. The first person was M.N. Roy. In 1934, Madhavendra Nath Rai, M.N. Rai, a famous communist. Madhavendra Nath Rai demanded the Britishers at the first time to set up a constituent assembly consisting only Indians. So this is very, very important question. There is a scope to ask a question. Who was the first person to demand the Britishers to set up a constituent assembly consisting of Indians? Is M.N. Rai, Madhavendra Nath Rai. After 1934, demanded by M.N. Roy, Indian National Congress at the first time passed a resolution of the demand of setting up of a Constituent Assembly. This is also important. When did Indian National Congress demanded British government and passed a resolution to set up a Constituent Assembly? Is 1935. In 1938, on behalf of Indian National Congress Party, Jawaharlal Nehru demanded the British government to set up a Constituent Assembly based on universal franchise, on the grounds of universal franchise, consisting of only Indians, no any outside person is not interfere. Jawaharlal Nehru demanded the British government on the behalf of Indian National Congress Party to set up a body, that what we call it is Constituent Assembly, consisting of Indian members, no any outside interference. And finally, it was came into real in 1940. In 1939, the Second World War was broke out. In 1939, the Second World War was broke out. It continued up to 1945 and it ended in 1945. When the Second World War was started in 1939, the British government tried to seek the cooperation from Indians. In the way of the Second World War, in 1940, when the Lord Linlithgow was the Governor General or Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, then the Governor General or Viceroy of India, put forward a demand to the Indians. If Indians would cooperate in the cooperation from Indians. In the way of the Second World War, in 1940, when the Lord Linlithgow was the Governor General or Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, then the Governor General or Viceroy of India, put forward a demand to the Indians. If Indians would cooperate in the Second World War and fight on the behalf of Britain, Indians would be granted permission to make a Constituent Assembly and permitted to make their own individual constitution. But the Lord Linlithgow proposals were hardly rejected by the Indians. That's why the August offer not came into real. In 1942, a cabinet minister of Britain, Sir Stafford Cripps, was sent to India to put forward the demand of the same proposal which was already put forward by the Lord Linlithgow. Cripps mission has one importance. Cripps mission was the first British organization which profound the establishment of Constituent Assembly officially. Sir Stafford Cripps mission, or Sir Stafford Cripps, a cabinet minister of Britain, came to India in 1942 and tried to explain the proposal of the Britain government of seeking cooperation of Indians to fight on the behalf of Britain government, and also he offered the making of Indian Constituent Assembly at the first time. That's why the historical background of making of Indian Constituent Assembly is very profounded in 1942 by the proposal laid down by the Cripps mission. But the Cripps mission proposals were hardly rejected by Mahatma Gandhi and other National Congress leaders. Mahatma Gandhi stated the Cripps mission's proposal as an outdated check. Mahatma Gandhi rejected Cripps mission's proposals as an outdated check. So completely the Cripps mission proposals were not came into real, they were completely failed. In 1945, the Second World War came to an end, and the Britain and their subsidiaries, their alliance group won in Second World War. Japan and their alliance groups defeated in the Second World War. After the Second World War end, the general elections were held in Britain in 1945. The Labour Party came into power in Britain. Clement Attlee took the charge as a Prime Minister of Britain in 1945. When Clement Attlee took the charge and the general elections were held in Britain in 1945, the Labour Party came into power in Britain. Clement Attlee took the charge as a Prime Minister of Britain in 1945. When Clement Attlee took the charge as a Prime Minister of Britain, he promised Indians to give independence as soon as possible. As the announcement of Clement Attlee came in 1945, then the Governor General or then the Viceroy of India, Lord Wavell, declared and announced that the general elections to the Central Legislative Council and State Legislative Councils would be held very soon. After the elections, after the results, the British government would going to set up Indian Constituent Assembly. This was known as Wavell Plan in 1945. As per Wavell Plan, in 1945 December and in 1946 January, the general elections were conducted to both Central Legislative Council and Provincial Legislative Councils in 1945 December and in 1946 January, as per Wavell's plan. So the general elections and the last general elections during British period was held in between 1945 to 1946 December and January. The results came out. And in 1946, one more committee was sent to India, that is a cabinet mission. It consisting of 3 members, 3 cabinet ministers, Sir Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander and Pethick Lawrence. This cabinet mission consisting of 3 cabinet ministers, Sir Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander. In 1946, one more committee was sent to India, that is a cabinet mission. It consisting of 3 members, 3 cabinet ministers, Sir Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander and Pethick Lawrence. This cabinet mission consisting of 3 cabinet ministers, Sir Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander and Pethick Lawrence. This cabinet mission came to India in 1946 March and submitted a report to the British government that Indians were eagerly waiting for the Independence Day, and they were eagerly waiting for the setting up of Indian Constituent Assembly. So the cabinet mission declared and gave the permission to set up a Constituent Assembly in India as per the elections held in 1945 December and 1946 January. On the grounds of the recommendations of the cabinet mission, Indian Constituent Assembly was framed in 1946 June-July. The elections were held to the Indian Constituent Assembly on the symbol of white elephant, Airavatam, in 1946 June-July. Here 2 things are very, very important in exam point of view. One, which committee propounded the setting up of Indian Constituent Assembly on the behalf of British government, that is Cripps Mission. The second one is, on which committee's recommendations Indian Constituent Assembly was set up. On the recommendations of cabinet mission, Indian Constituent Assembly was set up in 1946 June-July. These are 2 important things. Don't try to confusion. Cripps Mission is only the committee which first time propounded the setting up of a Constituent Assembly, but it was only a proposal. The official proposal from British government to set up a Constituent Assembly, the official proposal from the British government in the name of Cripps Mission was given in 1942, but it was not territorial. But Constituent Assembly was set up on the recommendations of cabinet mission. Cabinet mission consisting of 3 members, Stafford Cripps, Sir Stafford Cripps, A.V. Alexander and Pethick Lawrence. These are the historical demands of setting up of a Constituent Assembly. Okay. Next, coming to the next one, composition of the Constituent Assembly. Composition of Constituent Assembly. The elections were held to the Constituent Assembly in 1946 June and July. Okay, and the Constituent Assembly consisting of total numbers 389 members. The Constituent Assembly consisting of 389 members. But when Mountbatten Plan on June 3rd, 1947 was announced, Muslim League rejected the proposals delivered by the Mountbatten Plan and they quit Constituent Assembly. So that the number of Constituent Assembly came down to 299 members after Muslim League quitting. The symbol of Constituent Assembly was Airavatam or white elephant. Coming to the number of members in Constituent Assembly, actually a Constituent Assembly consisting of 389 members when the elections were held in 1946 June-July. Of these 289 members, 292 members were directly elected from British India, means from provinces. 93 members were directly elected from princely states. And remaining 4 members were elected from chief commissionerates, Delhi, Ajmer, Mewar, Coorg and Baluchistan. The elections were held to Indian Constituent Assembly in 1946 June and July. It consisting of 389 members. Of these 389 members, 292 members were elected from British India. British India means states, provinces. 14 provinces were there in 1946. 292 members were elected from the 14 provinces. Each member represents to the 10 lakh population of the presidency. It is very important. Each constituent member, assembly member, represents 10 lakh population of the presidency. For every 10 lakh population, a member represents on behalf of that population. So 292 members were elected from 14 provinces. 93 members were elected or nominated from the princely states. 564 plus princely states were there. Of these princely states, 93 members were nominated from princely states, and 4 seats are reserved for chief commissioners. There were 4 chief commissioners in India in 1946. They are Delhi, Ajmer, Mewar, Coorg and Baluchistan. These are the 4 chief commissioners, means like Union Territories, like UTs. They were directly administered by an officer appointed by the British government. Those are known as chief commissioners, like UTs, Union Territories. Delhi, Ajmer, Mewar, Coorg and Baluchistan. This is the composition of actual Constituent Assembly before quitting of Muslim League Party. But the Muslim League Party, with the demand of making separate Pakistan, they quitted from Constituent Assembly, and the number was fell down to 299. So finally, the number of Constituent Assembly is stand by at 299. At first, it consisting of 389 members. After quitting Muslim League Party, it consisting only 299 members. Of these 299 members, various provinces like United Provinces, Madras Provinces, Bengal Provinces, such big provinces consisting of very big number of members. Especially United Provinces, 55 members were elected from United Provinces, 49 members were elected from Madras Provinces, 36 members from elected from Bihar Provinces, and 21 members were Bombay Provinces, 19 members were elected from Bengal Provinces, 12 members from East Punjab, 17 members from Central Province and Begar Province, 9 members from Orissa, 8 members from Assam. This is various share of various states, and Delhi 1, Ajmer 1, Mewar 1, Coorg and Baluchistan 1. And of these 93 princely states, Travancore and Mysore shared a big number of constituent members. From Mysore, 7 members were nominated, 6 members from Travancore, 4 members from Gwalior, and other members. Here, there is a scope to ask a question. Which province sent a big number of members to the Constituent Assembly or princely states? There is a scope. United Province sent 55 members to the Constituent Assembly, followed by Madras sent 49 members to the Constituent Assembly, Bihar sent 36 members to the Constituent Assembly, Bombay 21 members, Bengal 19 members. Coming to the princely states, 7 members were represented from Mysore, 6 members represented from Travancore, 4 members represented from Gwalior. So this is important point. United Provinces, 55 members were represented from United Provinces, 7 members were represented from Mysore. So the largest number. So there is a scope to ask question. Which province represents big number in Constituent Assembly or any princely states? There is scope to ask question. So remember that the composition of Indian Constituent Assembly was 389 actually, but the number came down to 219 when Muslim League Party quitted. This is the composition of Indian Constituent Assembly. The general elections were held in June and July 1946 with the symbol of white elephant. Every member represents 10 lakh population from any princely state or any presidency. Next, when the Constituent Assembly was formed with 299 members finally, or with 389 members in 1946 August, it started its working from 1946 December. From 1946 onwards up to 1950, the Constituent Assembly worked on the grounds of the historical background of India, on the demands of Indian people, on the present scenario of Indian society. They worked 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to make Indian Constitution draft. Indian Constituent Assembly met 11 sessions to meet nearly 165 days to discuss on various topics in the process of making Indian Constitution. The first meeting of Indian Constituent Assembly was held on December 9th, 1946. The first meeting of Indian Constituent Assembly was held on December 9th, 1946. 211 members were attended to the first Constituent Assembly meeting out of 299. Dr. Sachidananda Sinha was elected as ad hoc chairman of the Indian Constituent Assembly. His name was referred by J.B. Kripalani, then the president of Indian National Congress Party. And the second meeting was held on December 11th, 1946, and Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad was elected as the permanent president of Constituent Assembly. And in the sequence of that first session, the third meeting was held on December 11th, 1946, and an important resolution was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru, that is, Objectives Resolution. It was passed by the Constituent Assembly on January 22nd, 1947. That Objectives Resolution, stated India as a sovereign state, as a democratic state, and as a welfare state. This Objectives Resolution, which was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru in Constituent Assembly on December 11th, it was the source of making a preamble to the Indian Constitution. Every constitution has its own preamble, but the original source of Indian Constitution's preamble was laid down in the Objectives Resolution passed by the Constituent Assembly on January 22nd, 1947. So like that, Constituent Assembly was set up on the recommendations of Cabinet Mission in 1946. Elections were held to the Constituent Assembly in 1946 June, July, and for 389 seats. The total number of Constituent Assembly is 389, already we discussed. 292 members were represented from provinces or presidencies, 93 members were represented from princely states, and 4 members were represented from chief commissionerates. Those are Delhi, Ajmer, Mewar, Coorg and Baluchistan. After quitting Muslim League Party from the Constituent Assembly, the number was decreased to 299. Okay, so the working procedure of Indian Constituent Assembly was started from December 9th, 1946. Nearly 165 days, Indian Constituent Assembly met on the drafting work of the Constitution. The first meeting of Constituent Assembly was held on December 9th, 1946. And on the day, out of 299, 211 members were attended to the first meeting of Constituent Assembly. Of 299 members, 211 members were attended to the first meeting. In this meeting, Dr. Sachidananda Sinha was elected as the ad hoc president of Constituent Assembly. Ad hoc means temporary. So Sachidananda Sinha was elected as the ad hoc president of Constituent Assembly on the day 1. His name is recommended by then the President of Indian National Congress Party, J.B. Kripalani. The second meeting was held on December 11, 1946. In this meeting, Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad was elected as the permanent president to the Constituent Assembly. Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad was elected as the permanent president to the Constituent Assembly. And the most important meeting was held on December 13, 1946. On the day of December 13, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru moved or introduced a resolution, that is Objectives Resolution. Objectives resolution is nothing but a resolution how our constitution is as the permanent president to Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad was elected as the permanent president to the Constituent Assembly. Dr. Babu Rajendra Prasad was elected as the permanent president to the Constituent Assembly. And the most important meeting was held on December 13, 1946. On the day of December 13, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru moved or introduced a resolution, that is Objectives Resolution. Objectives resolution is nothing but a resolution how our constitution would be framed, what are the objectives had to be inserted in the constitution, what would be the salient features of the Indian constitution. All these things are mentioned in this objectives resolution. It was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru on December 13, and it was approved by the Constituent Assembly on January 22nd, 1947. On January 22nd, 1947, the objectives resolution, which was moved by Jawaharlal Nehru in Constituent Assembly, was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. This objectives resolution is the main source to the preamble of Indian Constitution. Next, on July 22nd, 1947, the Constituent Assembly adopted the tricolor flag as our national flag, which is designed by Pingali Venkaya. On July 22nd, 1947, our Constituent Assembly adopted a tricolor flag as our national flag, which was designed and made by Pingali Venkaya in 1923 Vijayawada session. Next, on November 26, 1949, of the preamble of Indian Constitution. Next, on July 22nd, 1947, the Constituent Assembly adopted the tricolor flag as our national flag, which is designed by Pingali Venkaya. On July 22nd, 1947, our Constituent Assembly adopted a tricolor flag as our national flag, which was designed and made by Pingali Venkaya in 1923 Vijayawada session. Next, on November 26, 1949, after many discussions and deliberations, after deep discussion, Indian Constitution Assembly on November 26, 1949 adopted our Indian Constitution. This is the original Constitution, which was drafted by the drafting committee headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This is very, very, very important date. Our Indian Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on November 26, 1949. By remembering this day, November 26, the Indian government in 2015 announced November 26 as our National Constitution Day. So now November 26 in India is being observed as Indian Constitution Day. Why? Because on the day it was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. Coming to the next one, the last meeting, not official. The last day, November 26, the Indian government in 2015 announced November 26 as our National Constitution Day. So now November 26 in India is being observed as Indian Constitution Day. Why? Because on the day it was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. Coming to the next one, the last meeting, not official. The last meeting of Constituent Assembly was held on January 24, 1950. Out of 299, 284 members were attended to the last meeting of Constituent Assembly, which was held on January 24, 1950, and they put their signatures on the draft of the Constitution. 284 members were attended to the last meeting of the Constituent Assembly on January 24, 1950. 284 members were put their signatures on the draft of the Constitution, which was adopted on November 26, 1949. These are the important dates. On the same day of January 24, 1950, Janaganamana was adopted as our national song. Vande Mataram was adopted as our national song, and Janaganamana was adopted as our national anthem by the Constituent Assembly. It was very, very important date. On January 24, 1950, on January 24, November 50, Constituent Assembly adopted Jana Gana Manam as our national anthem. Vande Matram was adopted by the Constituent Assembly as our national song. National anthem is Janaganamana, national song is Vande Mataram. These two are adopted by the Constituent Assembly on January 24th, 1950. Important date. National flag was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on July 22nd, 1947. And in the same sequence of order, on 1949, on September 14th, 1949, our Indian Constitutional Assembly adopted Hindi as our national language. These are three important dates. July 22nd. In the same sequence of order, on 1949, on September 14th, 1949, our Indian Constitutional Assembly adopted Hindi as our national language. These are three important dates. July 22nd, September 14th, and January 24th. On September 14th, 1949, our Constituent Assembly adopted Hindi language as our national language, so that September 14th is being observed as National Hindi Day. National Hindi Day. Don't forget, July 22nd, September 14th, January 24th. These 3 dates are very, very important. Many times questions were asked in previous examinations. When did Indian national flag was adopted by the Constituent Assembly? July 22nd, 1947. When did Hindi was adopted as national language by the Constituent Assembly? September 14th, 1949. When did Janaganamana was adopted as our national anthem by the Constituent Assembly? January 24th, 1950. On the same day, Vande Mataram also adopted as our national song in 1950. Okay. Very, very important dates. There is a scope to be asked a question on the how many members were attended to the first meeting and the last meeting. 211 members were attended to the first meeting, which was held on December 9, 1946, out of 299. 284 members were attended to put their signature on the draft constitution on January 24, 1950. These two numbers are also very, very important in the examination point of view. Coming to the next one, Indian Constitutional Assembly met 11 sessions. Session is nothing but a continuation of days to discuss on a particular issue. Meeting, session, both are different. Meeting is a day, but continuation of meetings to discuss on a specific topic is considered as a session. Such sessions are 11. 11 sessions were held to discuss on various issues in the process of making draft constitution. First session was held in between December 9 to 23, 1946. Second session was held from January 22 to 25, 1947. Third session was held during April 28 to May 2nd, 1947. Fourth session was held during July 14 to 31, 1947. Fifth session was held August 14 to 30, 1947. And sixth session is only the session which was held on one day, January 27, 1948. Seventh session was held on November 4 to January 8, November 4, 1942, January 8, 1949. Eighth session was held in between May 16 to June 16, 1949. Ninth session was held in between July 30 to September 18, 1949. And 10th session was held in between October 6 to 17, 1949. And the last session was held in between 1914 to November 40 to 26, 1949. Here, January 24 is not mentioned in the 11th session. Why? Because January 24 is not official meeting of the Constituent Assembly. It was just a formal meeting to take the signatures of the Constituent Assembly. That's why it was not considered in the 11th session. January 24th is only a formal meeting to take the signatures of the Constituent Assembly members on the draft constitution. So 11 sessions were held, and 165 days the Constituent Assembly met on the working or procedure of the draft constitution. And finally, after adopting the constitution on November 26, our Indian constitution was came into force on January 26, 1950. It has a historical importance. That is, it was back to the 1929 December 29 to December 31st INC session, which was held at Lahore, headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Indian National Congress annual session was held at Lahore in 1929 from December 29 to 31. This Lahore INC session was headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. In this meeting, as a president of INC, Jawaharlal Nehru introduced a resolution which is called Purna Swaraj Resolution. Purna Swaraj Resolution. As for this resolution, the INC adopted a date, January 26. The Lahore INC session was headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. In this meeting, as a president of INC, Jawaharlal Nehru introduced a resolution which is called Purna Swaraj Resolution. Purna Swaraj Resolution. As per this resolution, the INC adopted a date, January 26, would be celebrated as Independence Day from 1930 onwards. Indian National Congress was adopted the resolution which is moved by Jawaharlal Nehru called Purna Swaraj Resolution. As January 26 is declared as the Independence Day, and it had to be celebrated all over India in 1930. As per the resolution passed in Lahore session on January 26, 1930, first time in India, the independence celebrations were conducted all over India as per the resolution passed in Lahore session. That's why January 26, 1930, it was celebrated as Independence Day all over the country. To remember that day, our Indian Constitution came into force on January 26, 1950. That is the historical background of the January 26. Many times question was asked, why January 26 was declared as the commencement day of Indian Constitution? Means the day, what is the history behind that day? What is the reason behind that January 26 is January 26 was already celebrated as an Independence Day in India in 1930 as per the resolution passed in 1929 Lahore session as Purna Swaraj resolution. That is the historical background. Okay, you should remember that date, 1950, January 26, November 26, 1949. November 26, 1949 is the day of adaptation of Indian Constitution. 1950, January 26 is the commencement date of Indian Constitution. Okay, these 2 dates are very, very important. Coming to the next one. Constituent Assembly is consisting of 389 members. Here, see what is the community representation in the Constituent Assembly. Hindus, 163 members, 163 Hindus were represented. From Muslim community, 80 members were represented. From scheduled castes, 31 members. Indian Christians, 6 members. Backward tribes, 6 members. 4 members. Anglo-Indians, 3 members. Parsis, 3 members. Totally 296 means 292 from presidencies, 4 members from chief commissioners. Totally 296. So of these 296, 163 members were represented Hindu community, 80 members represented Muslim community, 31 members represented SC community, 6 Indian Christians were represented, 6 members represented backward tribes, 4 members represented 6, 3 members represented Anglo-Indians, 3 members represented Parsis. Coming to the parties, the parties seats won in the elections held in 1946 June July. Coming to the party wise, Indian National Congress won 208 seats out of 389. Of these 389 seats, 208 seats were won by Indian National Congress Party, followed by Muslim Party 73 seats. After that it quitted. Independents 8 seats, and remaining parties. The parties seats won in the elections held in 1946 June July. Coming to the party wise, Indian National Congress won 208 seats out of 389. Of these 389 seats, 208 seats were won by Indian National Congress Party, followed by Muslim Party 73 seats. After that it quitted. Independents 8 seats, and remaining parties, All India Scheduled Caste Federation, All India Hindu Mahasabha, each party, other each parties own each 1 seat. So in majority, the Congress Party won 208 seats, Muslim League Party won 73 seats. So the elections were held on the symbol of white elephant. The elections were held 1946 July, and each candidate represents 10 lakh population. To make the draft of the Indian Constitution, Constituent Assembly situated 22 committees to discuss on various issues. These 22 committees can be classified as major committees and minor committees. There are 8 major committees and there are 13 minor committees. Overall, there are 22 committees were set up to discuss on various issues and to provide. There are 22 committees were set up to discuss on various issues and to provide suggestions, recommendations, and other things. So coming to the first one, major committees. In the examination point of view, there is a scope to ask a question about who is headed by a particular committee. Like that, Union's Powers Committee is headed by, or there is a scope to ask one more type of questions in the matching. Under the matching section, under the group A, name of the committee, and this side group B, headed by the person. So there is a scope to ask questions in this area in matching mode. So Union Powers Committee is headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and Union Constitution Committee is also headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Provincial Constitution Committee is headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Drafting Committee, of all these 22 committees, Drafting Committee is the most important committee which plays a vital role in the making of draft constitution. Drafting Committee is headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Rules of Procedure Committee is headed by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. States Committee is headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Here you can observe the difference. States Constitution Committee is headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. States Committee is headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Advisory Committee, the largest committee consisting of 54 members, is headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. There is also a scope to ask question which Constituent Assembly is consisting of more numbers, or which is the largest committee of Constitutional Assembly's committees, that is Advisory Committee. It consisting of some subcommittees also. The main Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minority Rights, and other provinces. Another province is headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. This Advisory Committee have some subcommittees. Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights is headed by J.B. Kripalani. Subcommittee on Minorities is headed by H.C. Mukherjee. Subcommittee on Northeast Frontiers Tribals, Gopinath Bardoli. Subcommittee on Excluded Areas, except Northeast Frontier Tribals, that is A.V. Thakur. Important, these subcommittees. Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights is headed by J.B. Kripalani. Subcommittee on Minorities is headed by H.C. Mukherjee. Subcommittee on the Northeast Frontier Tribal Areas is headed by Gopinath Bardoli. Except Northeast Frontier Tribal Areas, remaining tribal areas group is headed by A.V. Thakur. Steering Committee is headed by Rajendra Prasad. Coming to the minor committees, Finance and Staff Committee is headed by Rajendra Prasad. Credential Committee is headed by Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer. House Committee is headed by Pattabi Sitaramaya. He was first committee. Drafting Committee was set up by the Constituent Assembly on August 29, 1947. Important date. Constituent Assembly set up a drafting committee on August 29, 1947. The main function another than Nalini Ranjan Sarkar. Linguistic Provinces Committee is headed by S.K. Dhar. Special Committee to examine the draft constitution is headed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Press Gallery Committee is headed by Usha Nathsen, and Ad hoc Committee on Citizenship is headed by S. Vardachari. Of all these committees, there is one important committee which played a key role in the making of draft constitution, that is none other than drafting committee. Drafting committee was set up by the Constituent Assembly on August 29, 1947. Important date. Constituent Assembly set up a drafting committee on August 29, 1947. The main function of Constituent Drafting Committee is whatever the recommendations are given by these committees, the drafting committee has to examine, has to discuss on the various recommendations given by the committees and make a draft constitution. That is the main function of the committee. This drafting committee is headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It consisting of 6 members. Overall, it consisting of 7. 1 plus 6. 1 chairman plus 6 members. 1 plus 6 is equal to 7 members. So, its members are N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Alladi Krishna Swamy Iyer, K. M. Munshi, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, N. Madhavaravu was replaced by B.L. Mittar, who resigned due to ill health. T.T. Krishnamachari, he replaced D.P. Khaitan, who died in 1948. So these 6 members are very, very important in the examination point of view. Many times questions asked in the form of who is not a member of drafting committee? Who is not a member of drafting committee? So that you have to remember all these 6 names, including chairman. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was chair to the drafting committee. Members are Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Alladi Krishna Swamy Iyer, K. M. Munshi, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, Madhavaravu and T.T. Krishnamachari. Madhavaravu replaced B.L. Mittar, who resigned to the committee due to his ill health. And T.T. Krishnamachari replaced D.P. Khaitan, who died due to ill health in 1948. So this drafting committee received many recommendations from all these committees on various issues and finally make a draft. This drafting committee published its first edition in 1948 February. The drafting committee made the draft constitution and it was published in 1948 February to the public, media and other organizations in the society. 8 months period was given to the public to give any recommendations, suggestions, modifications, changes. After taking various recommendations, various changes, various modifications from the public, media and other things, the drafting committee published its second report in 1948 October. After many changes, the drafting committee submitted its final report to the Constituent Assembly and it was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on November 26, 1949. The day is being observed in India today is as Indian Constitution Day. So these are the important committees and their chairpersons, very, very important, you should remember. Especially focus on this area. There is a scope to ask question on this area, who is not a member of drafting committee. So make down all these things, all these points, and repeat more times to note down on the rough paper. You can easily. Important facts of making of Indian Constitution. There are some interesting facts about Indian Constitution and Constituent Assembly. Everyone should know about these interesting facts. We can surprise definitely about after knowing these interesting facts. In examination point of also, those are important. Coming to the points, some points already we came to know. Ad hoc President of Constituent Assembly, you know well, he is Mr. Sachidananda Sinha. Here one point you have to remember, you have to observe. Sachidananda Sinha was elected as an ad hoc President of Constituent Assembly following a tradition of France. What is the tradition of France in the election procedure? In France, to elect the president to a particular committee or whatever it could be, the first priority is given to the senior member. As per in terms of age, the senior member is given the first priority to be elected as the president of a committee. This is the France tradition. We derived the same France tradition in the Constituent Assembly to elect the president. On the day of first meeting, December 9th, 1946, following the France tradition, the senior most member of the Constituent Assembly, Sachidananda Sinha, was elected as an ad hoc president. His name is referred by J.B. Kripalan. Is it clear? Sachidananda Sinha was elected as an ad hoc president of Constituent Assembly, following a France tradition to elect the senior most member as the president. Okay, coming to the next one, permanent presidents of the Constituent Assembly, you know well, Babu Rajendra Prasad. Vice presidents of Constituent Assembly were also elected on the day means December 11th, 1946. The vice presidents of Constituent Assembly are H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamachari, not a T.T. He is V.T. Krishnamachari. H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamachari were the vice presidents of Constituent Assembly. Here you have to observe one more thing. On the day one, Satyananda Sinha was elected as ad hoc president. On the same day, Frank Anthony was also elected as the ad hoc vice president. Frank Anthony elected as the ad hoc vice president. But these two members, H.C. Mukherjee and V.D. Krishnamacharya, are the permanent vice presidents of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, next, the legal advisor of the Constituent Assembly. Constitutional advisor or the legal advisor is B.N. Rao, Benagal Narsingh Rao. Benagal Narsingh Rao. He is the legal advisor to the Constituent Assembly. First of all, he prepared a draft constitution. Next, secretary to the Constituent Assembly is H.V. or Iyengar. Secretary to the Constituent Assembly was H.V. or Iyengar. Chief draftsman of Constituent Assembly is S.M. Mukherjee. Here H.C. Mukherjee, here S.M. Mukherjee. These two persons are different. H.C. Mukherjee is the vice president of Constituent Assembly, whereas S.M. Mukherjee is the chief draftsman of Constituent Assembly. Chief calligrapher. You know, one interesting fact, the original constitution is completely handmade, completely written by a human being. He is Prem Bihari Narayan Raisda. Prem Bihari Narayan Raisda wrote Indian Constitution in an italic font. The original constitution was not typed in a typing machine. It was completely handmade. It was completely written by Prem Bihari Narayan Raisda. Important. The calligrapher of Indian Constitution is Prem Bihari Narayan Raisda. Next, the Indian Constitution's pages. Each and every page of the Indian Constitution was beautified by drawing different types of pictures, which reflects the Indian culture, Indian history, and Indian tradition. These drawings are drawn by two members, Nanda Lal Bose and Diohar Ram Manohar Sinha. Nanda Lal Bose and Ram Manohar Sinha. These two artists beautified each and every page of original Constitution by drawing the pictures which represents the history and the tradition and philosophical backgrounds of India. Next, chief architecture of Indian Constitution or the father of Indian Constitution are more than one. You know, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar belongs to depressed classes. He was headed to the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly. He played very important role in the making of Indian Constitution. That's why he is known as father of Indian Constitution or chief architecture of the Constitution or modern Manu. Okay, coming to the next points. How much time it takes to complete Indian Constitution? It takes 2 years, 11 months, 18 days. Constituent Assembly took 2 years, 11 months, 18 days to complete Indian Constitution. This time is very important. Time taken to complete Indian Constitution draft work is 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. In the world, American Constitution was made in very less period. Less than 4 months period, American Constitution was prepared because American Constitution was the smallest constitution in the world, the first written constitution in the world, the most rigid constitution in the world. It consisting of only 7 articles, and the only constitution which was made very less than 4 months period. And you have to remember one more thing. Australian Constitution is made in 9 years period of time, but in our Indian Constitution was made 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. Okay, these two things you have to remember. Which constitution is made in very short period is America, less than 4 months. It consisting of 7 articles only. Which constitution took more time to constitute to made is Australian Constitution. It took 9 years of period consisting of 126 articles. How much time taken to complete Indian Constitution is 2 years, 11 days, 11 months, 18 days. This time is very important in examination point of view. Next, the drafting committee, which is headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and other committees. They visited nearly 60 countries. They studied the constitutions and taken many suitable items to our Indian Constitution. So nearly 60 countries were visited by the constitutional members. Nearly 64 lakhs rupees amount was spent on the making of Indian Constitution. Important. Nearly 64 lakhs amount was spent on the making of Indian Constitution, and 165 days the Indian Constitution was met. Of these 165 days, it took 141 days to write Indian original Constitution. And when the drafting committee published its first edition in 1940 February, many amendments were received from the public. Nearly 7,635 modifications or amendments were taken from the public. Of these 7,635 amendments, 2,473 amendments came to discuss. Okay, next, when the Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on November 26, 1949, it consisting 22 parts, 8 schedules, and 395 articles. Our original Constitution comprising 395 articles, 8 schedules, and 22 parts. Passing on years, decades, and day by day, our Constitution is being modified, being amended, being changed. Right now, there are 25 parts in India. There are 12 schedules in Indian Constitution. There are 465 articles in our Indian Constitution. Our Indian Constitution is organic and it's there are 25 parts in India. There are 12 schedules in Indian Constitution. There are 465 articles in our Indian Constitution. Our Indian Constitution is organic and our Indian Constitution is dynamic. It's being updated as per our demands, needs, and necessity. So that's why our Constitution is being upgraded, being modified, being amended, being changed as per the generations. So the original Constitution consisting 22 parts, 8 schedules, and 395 articles. This number cannot be changed at all. The numbered parts are 22. The numbered schedules are 8. The numbered articles is 395. So these are the important facts you have to remember.